Welcome to a unique bedtime story experience for adults, crafted to transport you into a world of intrigue, passion, and raw emotions. Please note, this story contains mature themes, including explicit scenes and strong language, making it suitable only for listeners aged 18 and above. After this introduction, the screen will fade to black to help you relax, unwind, and fully immerse yourself in this story, perfect for listening at night. If you enjoy this audiobook, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of the captivating stories I'll be publishing soon. Your next adventure is just a click away. Now, let's begin. Title: Sailor's Wife. Chapter 1. Sarah was a woman of unwavering strength and tenacity, whose heart beat in rhythm with her love for her family. Her husband, John, was a sailor who spent long months on the open sea, far from home and loved ones. Sarah, with the determination of a hero, shouldered the burden of keeping the family together while John was away. Her days were filled with work, caring for her children and longing for her beloved man. There was an atmosphere of warmth and love in Sarah's house that radiated to everyone who crossed the threshold. Her children, full of energy and joy of life, were her greatest pride and the meaning of existence. Sarah has always tried to be a mother to them who can do everything, from comforting them when they hurt their knees to solving complicated school problems. Every day, Sarah woke up at dawn to prepare breakfast for her loved ones and send them to school and work. Her hands were always full, from cleaning the house to cooking dinners that smelled like an invitation to culinary journeys. In the evenings, after the children were asleep, Sarah would sit by the window, staring at the horizon and waiting for John to return. Even though John was often absent, their love was like steel, strong and unbreakable. Each letter from him was a treasure for Sarah, full of longing and a promise of return. She knew that John loved her and their children more than anything, and his work at sea was an expression of his love of life and adventure. Sarah was a woman of extraordinary strength of character who was able to remain calm in the most difficult moments. Her devotion to her family was like a beacon that guided her through the storms and storms of life. She knew that her love and sacrifice were the foundation on which she built her family's future. As John's ship finally docked after an extended voyage across uncharted seas, Sarah eagerly awaited his return, her heart aching with anticipation. She had spent countless nights alone in their chambers, her thoughts often wandering to the touch of his rough sailor's hands upon her delicate skin, the smell of salt and sweat that clung to him like a lover's embrace. In preparation for John's homecoming, Sarah spent an entire day pampering herself, drawing hot baths infused with fragrant lavender oils to soothe her aching muscles, then gently rubbing her skin with a rich, nourishing body cream. She ensured that every inch of her was smooth and soft for him, eagerly awaiting the moment they would be reunited. Her heart raced as she prepared herself in their marital chamber. Sarah adorned her supple form with a sheer lace gown that danced tantalizingly around her curves, teasing him of what lay beneath its delicate fabric. The sweet perfume of jasmine and honeysuckle filled the air, weaving an enchanting spell around them both. At last he arrived, his sea-worn eyes lighting up as he beheld his radiant wife standing before him in their chambers. John's heart swelled with love for her, as if 1,000 waves had crashed upon the shore of his heart, only to be absorbed by the infinite ocean of his affection for her. Sarah gently took his calloused hand, leading him towards their bed. the very same one that they had shared countless times before, yet never more than this moment. They paused at the edge of the mattress, their eyes locked in a passionate gaze that spoke volumes without words. As he kissed her tenderly, John's lips wandered down her slender neck, tracing the contours of her body with gentle kisses. He then found himself drawn to those marks that bore witness to their love, the scarred testament of his child growing within her womb, now a cherished reminder of their bond as husband and wife. Without hesitation, he pressed his lips against these scars, feeling the soft rise and fall of her chest beneath him. It was here that she bore him two beautiful children, a constant reminder of the depths of love they shared. In this moment, he kissed them not only as tokens of their union, but also as tributes to the strength of his wife who endured so much for their family. Their bodies entwined like ancient vines, they laid down upon their bed. The sheets felt cool and inviting against their heated skin, a gentle reminder of the comfort they found in each other's embrace. As the warm currents of love flowed between them, Sarah arched her back ever so slightly, offering him full access to her desires. He traced his fingers along the delicate curve of her hip, then further down, his touch a whisper against her sensitive flesh. With each gentle stroke, she felt herself being drawn closer and closer to him, until their bodies were but one entity united in their love for one another. His lips found hers once more, their tongues mingling in an erotic dance of passion and desire. As they continued to explore one another, their bodies moved in perfect harmony, each touch, each kiss building upon the last until they reached a crescendo so powerful it threatened to shatter the very walls of their chambers. And then, it happened. They were one, their hearts beating together in unison as if guided by some divine force. As the waves of ecstasy washed over them, Sarah and John knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that they belonged together, two souls forever bound by love. In the warm glow of the evening sun, Sarah stood in the kitchen, preparing dinner for her family. Her hands gently peeled the vegetables, and her thoughts turned to John, who was once again at sea, away from home and his loved ones. At the same time, her heart was filled with longing for his touch and warmth that she loved so much. Then she heard the doorbell. She opened it with a smile, expecting to see her children returning from school, but standing on the threshold was Roger, John's friend and her faithful companion in difficult times. His presence was like a balm to her loneliness, and the smile with which he greeted her was reassuring. "Hi, Sarah," Roger said, walking into the house and hugging her gently. "How are you?" Sarah smiled back, relieved to see a familiar face. "Okay, Roger, what about you? John told me you've been traveling a lot lately." Roger nodded, sitting down at the table and taking the cup of tea she handed him. "Yes, that's true, but I always find time to visit your family." Sarah smiled warmly, grateful for his presence and support. "It means a lot to us, Roger. John told me you were a great friend." Roger looked at her with a smile that seemed to penetrate her heart. "I'm just what John needs, Sarah, and you're like family to me." At that moment, the children ran into the house, and Roger happily jumped up to hug them and make them laugh with his jokes. Sarah looked at them with a smile, feeling that despite her loneliness, she had people around her who loved and supported her. The evening was filled with conversation, laughter, and memories of John. Roger told anecdotes from their travels together, and Sarah listened with joy in her heart, enjoying the moments spent with her friend and her children. When it was time for bed, Roger said goodbye to her with a gentle kiss on the cheek, promising to return in a few days. Sarah closed the door, feeling the warmth and peace he left behind. She knew that Roger was like a brother to her, and his presence in her life was like a lighthouse that guided her through the storms of loneliness and longing for her beloved husband. Chapter 2. In the quiet hours of a moonlit night, as Sarah lay in their marital bed beside her husband John, her thoughts began to wander, much like the gentle breeze that occasionally caressed their chambers. Her mind lingered on her dear friend Roger, who often visited them when John was away at sea. The memories of Roger's visits played out like a well-crafted symphony within her mind, each note resonating more deeply than the last. His laughter echoing through their home, his warm smile that seemed to light up the room. These were the things she clung to during John's extended absences. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah found herself fantasizing about Roger in ways she had never imagined possible. In her dreams, he became more than just a dear friend. He transformed into a symbol of comfort and solace, an anchor amidst the stormy seas of loneliness that often threatened to engulf her. One evening, as she lay alone in their bed, Sarah closed her eyes and allowed herself to succumb to the allure of these fantasies. She pictured Roger standing before her, his tall stature casting a shadow over her body like an ancient oak tree on a summer's day. His strong arms wrapped around her, pulling her close as if she were a fragile piece of porcelain that he wished to protect from harm. Her imagination took flight then, painting vivid images in her mind's eye. Roger's lips gently brushing against hers, their kisses tasting like the sweet nectar of ripe fruit beneath the summer sun. She pictured him caressing her skin with gentle hands, tracing the delicate lines that adorned her body like intricate lace patterns upon an antique gown. As these thoughts continued to swirl within her mind, Sarah found herself slipping further and further into a world of passion and desire that she had never before experienced. It was as if the very walls of their chambers were fading away, leaving nothing but the two of them, lost in each other's embrace and united by an unbreakable bond of love. Yet even as she reveled in these fantasies, Sarah could not shake the feeling that what she was doing was wrong. After all, Roger was her dear friend John's closest companion, a man who had proven time and time again his loyalty and devotion to their family. To entertain such thoughts was to betray both him and her own marriage vows. But try as she might, Sarah could not rid herself of these tantalizing visions. They haunted her dreams like ghostly apparitions, whispering sweet promises of pleasure that threatened to consume her whole being. And so, it was only a matter of time before she found herself succumbing fully to their allure, allowing them to lead her down a path she had never dared to tread. In the end, Sarah realized that she was not alone in this journey of self-discovery. For within each fantasy lay a reminder of the love and affection she shared with both Roger and John. It was a love that transcended boundaries and defied conventions, binding them together in ways they could never have imagined possible. And as the sun rose on another day, Sarah knew that she must face her feelings head-on, confronting the truth of her desires, while still honoring the bonds that connected her to those she loved most dearly. For only then could she hope to find true happiness and fulfillment within the pages of this complex tapestry we call life. Sarah sat in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the aroma of freshly brewed coffee that lingered in the air like a gentle caress. Her thoughts revolved around Roger, her husband's friend, whose presence in her life caused an avalanche of emotions and anxieties. The memory of his warm smile, deep eyes, and gentle touch sent a chill through her that both excited and unsettled her. On the one hand, Sarah felt guilty and disloyal to John, the man she had loved with all her heart for years. Their love was the foundation of her life, the rock on which she built her family and future. On the other hand, feeling for Roger seemed something new, fresh, and extremely intense. It was a mixture of fascination, mystery, and passion that crept into her heart like an uninvited guest. Sarah was struggling with an internal conflict that was tearing her in half. Could she afford to have an affair with Roger? Was she able to betray John, the man who had always been her support? With every moment she spent with Roger, her loyalty to her husband seemed more and more fragile, as if made of thin glass that could crack under the slightest pressure. Thoughts and images swirled in Sarah's head, a mixture of remorse and lust. The memory of Roger's touch on her skin sent waves of heat rushing through her from head to toe. His warm look, full of understanding and tenderness, made her feel like she was in a bubble, separated from reality and everyday worries. Sarah knew she had to make a decision. Will she betray John? Will she allow herself to have an affair with Roger, risking everything she has built over the years? Or will she be able to resist temptation and return to the safe haven of her marriage? Every day spent with Roger was like a step into the unknown, full of risk and uncertainty. Every moment with John was like coming home to the place she knew and loved. Sarah felt torn between two worlds, two realities that seemed irreconcilable. Her heart was beating faster, and her breathing was becoming shallow and uneven. She knew she had to make a decision, but was she ready? Did she have the strength to choose one path, abandon the other, and live with the consequences of her choice? Right now, Sarah felt like a bird trapped in a cage, yearning for freedom but afraid of risk. Her heart was full of conflicting emotions, and her mind was filled with thoughts of love, betrayal, and consequences. She knew there were no easy answers, but she had to find the strength to make a decision that could change her life forever. As the soft, sultry night breeze gently caressed their eager bodies, Sarah and Roger found themselves drawn irresistibly towards each other, like two moths to a flame. Their gazes locked, pulsating with a primal hunger that had been building up inside them for so long. Their hearts pounded in unison as they shared a silent understanding of the raw, passionate journey they were about to embark upon. Their initial tryst was not to be confined within the rigid walls of their marital bed. Oh no, not tonight. As Sarah and Roger's desire reached its boiling point, their slick, sweaty bodies glided effortlessly across the wooden porch floor, the creaking boards echoing their every move in a tantalizing symphony of lust. Feeling the smooth wooden texture beneath their bare feet, they embraced each other passionately, as if to merge into one being. Their fingers traced the contours of each other's bodies with an intensity that only true love can evoke. Sarah's nipples, pert and taut, begged for Roger's gentle caress, while his own erect manhood yearned for her warm, wet embrace. As their fervent kissing intensified, Roger's hands found their way to Sarah's luscious ass cheeks, squeezing them with a possessive firmness that spoke volumes about the depth of their desire. The gentle caress turned into a series of sharp spanks, each one leaving a blush-worthy imprint on her delicate flesh. Breaking away from their passionate embrace, they made their way through the dimly lit hallway, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she felt Roger's fingers slide between her thighs, tracing the sensitive skin there with a tender touch that belied its sharp edge. As they stumbled upon an unexpected pause in their lust-fueled journey, the sight of a sturdy washing machine standing sentinel in the kitchen, they couldn't help but let out a shared gasp of delight at the prospect of fulfilling their wildest fantasies on this unconventional playground. With Sarah straddling the front edge of the washer, her legs spread wide apart, Roger positioned himself between them, his stiff rod ready to plunge deep into her velvety depths. He began with slow, deliberate thrusts, each one hitting a sweet spot within her that sent waves of pleasure coursing through her body. But Sarah craved more than just gentle loving. She yearned for the sharp, passionate edge that had been missing from their marriage. And so, with a fierce growl escaping his lips, Roger seized her by the hips and began to pound into her mercilessly. The force of each thrust reverberated through the room, echoing their mutual pleasure in a rhythmic dance of lust and desire. As Sarah's moans of pleasure grew louder, so did her appetite for more. She grabbed onto Roger's broad shoulders, urging him on as he continued to pump into her with relentless determination. Their lovemaking became a naughty rapture, a wild journey that left them breathless and utterly spent. Finally, when their bodies could take no more, they collapsed onto the cold, hard floor, gasping for air as their hearts pounded in unison once again. As dawn broke through the curtained window, casting its golden light upon their entwined forms, they knew that this love was true, that it would never end, and that they would be together forever. In the soft glow of the morning sun, they embarked on another round of rough sex, their bodies still glistening with sweat and desire. As Roger thrust into Sarah once more, she could feel his erect rod pulsating within her, a testament to their enduring passion. And as he found her sweet spot again and again, she knew that this love affair would never fade away, no matter how many years they spent together. And so, with each tender caress and sharp, passionate thrust, Sarah and Roger's love story unfolded like a beautiful tapestry, woven from the threads of desire and passion that bound them together for all eternity. Chapter 3. Sarah, immersed in a passionate affair with Roger, began to spend more and more time away from home, leaving the children in the care of her husband. Even though John tried to be understanding and supportive, he couldn't hide his growing anxiety. He saw his wife changing, becoming more withdrawn and distracted. The children, who had always been her priority, now felt neglected and alone. One day, when Sarah came home late in the evening, she found her husband with their daughters, who were sitting on the floor, surrounded by books and colored pencils. John read them fairy tales, his voice sounding like a lullaby to soothe their hurting hearts. Seeing this scene, Sarah felt a pang of shame and regret. She understood that her presence was necessary and every moment spent with the children was valuable. She began to wonder about the consequences of her actions. The children needed her love and attention, and she, absorbed in romance, forgot about what was really important. She was beginning to see that her relationship with Roger was not only destroying her marriage, but was also hurting the people closest to her heart. That evening, after the children were asleep, Sarah sat at the kitchen table and stared at her empty teacup. John walked up to her and gently touched her arm. "Honey, what's going on?" he asked quietly. "I see you've been different lately. Can you tell me what's bothering you?" Sarah looked at him and felt tears welling up in her eyes. She realized it couldn't go on like this. She had to make a decision that could change everything. "John," she began, her voice trembling, I have to tell you something. This is very important, and I need your help to fix this." Chapter 4. The tension between Sarah and John grew every day as her secret affair with Roger became harder to hide. Sarah felt trapped, torn between her loyalty to her husband and her irresistible desire to be with Roger. Her heart beat faster every time John returned home after a long cruise, fearing that he might smell his lover's scent on her. One evening, as John sat down to dinner with the children, Sarah came into the room with a smile plastered on her face, trying to hide her inner conflict. However, her eyes roamed the walls, looking for any excuse to escape this situation. John, noticing her anxiety, asked, "What's wrong, honey? You look worried." Sarah tried to come up with an excuse, but her voice was shaking as she replied, "Nothing. I'm just tired." John wasn't stupid. He knew his wife too well to believe these explanations. His heart began to beat faster as he thought about the possible reasons for her anxiety. Did it have something to do with Roger? As dinner drew to a close, the tension in the room grew. Children played on the floor, unaware of the drama unfolding above their heads. John looked at Sarah with determination in his eyes and said, "We need to talk." Sarah felt her heart leap into her throat. She knew this moment would come, but she wasn't ready for it. Her thoughts revolved around what she should say, how to explain her feelings for Roger, and why she had betrayed John. As John came closer, Sarah felt her hands become clammy with fear. His voice was quiet but full of emotion. "Is there something you want to tell me? Something that's been bothering you?" Sarah looked at him with pain in her heart. She knew she had to tell the truth, but the words stuck in her throat. Her eyes filled with tears as John repeated, "Sarah, please tell me." In that moment, Sarah felt as if the whole world was spinning around her. Her heart was breaking into pieces as she realized there was no going back. She gathered her courage and said, "John, I have to tell you something." Her voice trembled and tears rolled down her cheeks as she began to talk about her affair with Roger. Each word was like a knife to John's heart, as he struggled to understand why his wife could hurt him so much. When Sarah finished speaking, John looked at her with pain and disbelief in his eyes. His heart was torn between love for his wife and a sense of betrayal. He knew he had to make a decision that would change their lives forever. In that moment of tension and pain, Sarah felt like the worst person in the world. Her heart screamed for forgiveness, but she knew she couldn't expect it from John. She realized that she had to face the consequences of her actions and face the truth, no matter how painful that truth was. As night fell over the house, Sarah and John sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts and emotions. Their future hung in the balance, and one thing was certain: their lives would never be the same again. John felt betrayed and torn between his love and a sense of deep disappointment. He knew that a line had been crossed, and the trust that was the foundation of their marriage was shattered. After a long and painful conversation, John made a decision that would change his life forever. He realized that he could not forgive Sarah for her betrayal, because he believed that such a line could not be crossed in marriage. He knew he had to protect himself and his children from further pain and the breakdown of his family. With a heavy heart and tears in his eyes, John decided to leave Sarah, thus ending their marriage. Sarah looked at him in disbelief and despair, realizing that her actions had led to this moment. Her heart was bleeding, but she knew she had to accept the consequences of her actions. She realized that she could not expect forgiveness from John, who felt too deeply wronged to continue living under one roof with her. As John left the house, Sarah felt her world fall apart. She knew she had to face a new reality: life without a husband and a father to their children. It was a bitter lesson that taught her how fragile the foundations of a relationship can be, and how difficult it is to repair trust once broken. As John closed the door behind him, Sarah was left alone in the silence of the night, in pain and loneliness. Their lives would never be the same again. She, as a single mother, he's a man who had to learn to live without the woman he once loved with all his heart. Chapter 5. Sarah sat on the couch, staring at the blank wall. Her thoughts revolved around the recent events that had turned her life upside down. A few days ago, she learned about the secrets of Roger, the man she loved, and with whom she planned to spend the rest of her life. Now she had to face the truth and make decisions that could change everything. Roger sat next to her, silent. He knew this moment was inevitable, and that he had to let Sarah express her feelings. "Sarah, he began quietly, trying to find the right words. "I know this is hard for you." "Difficult? This is This is terrifying," Sarah exclaimed, unable to contain her emotions any longer. "How could you hide something like that from me?" Roger sighed heavily and looked at her with an expression of pain and resignation. "It was a part of my past that I didn't want to share with you," he explained. "I thought I could hide it, but now I see how wrong I was." Sarah felt her heart break into pieces. "Do you even realize what this means? It changes everything," she screamed, tears flowing down her cheeks. Roger got up and walked over to her. "Sarah," he said, trying to hug her, but she moved away from him. "Please let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," she screamed in despair. "How could you deceive me? How could you betray my trust?" Roger lowered his hands and looked at her with pleading eyes. "Sarah, I didn't mean to hurt you," he said, his voice breaking. "But now I see I have to be honest with you." At that moment, Sarah felt her heart break into pieces. Her love for Roger, which had once seemed so strong and pure, was now tainted by secrets and lies. "I don't know what to do," she whispered, plopping down on the couch. Roger sat next to her, trying to comfort her. "Please give me a chance," he said quietly. "Let me fix what I did." Sarah looked at him with deep sadness in her eyes. "I'm not sure I can forgive you," she replied, feeling her heart bleed. "But I promise I will fight." Her voice trembled as she tried to process the magnitude of his betrayal. The silence between them was as heavy as 1,000 unspoken words, each moment stretching into eternity. Roger's gaze was a mixture of remorse and pleading. He knew he had crossed a line from which there was no return. "Sarah, I understand your pain," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant to hurt you like this. I thought I could keep that part of my past buried, but it seems that ghosts always find a way to haunt us." He paused, gathering his thoughts before continuing. "I took a life, Sarah. I killed a man in a moment of blind rage and paid the price for my actions by serving time in prison. It was a dark chapter in my life, one I thought I had left behind." A tear escaped from Sarah's eye, tracking a silver path down her cheek. "You have no idea how many times I've imagined us together," she continued, her voice filled with a bitterness she couldn't mask. "We were supposed to be partners, to share everything with each other, our joys, our fears, our pasts." She paused, trying to find the words that would express the depth of her hurt. "And yet you kept this from me, this one secret that could change everything." Roger nodded, his eyes downcast in shame. "I know I should have told you earlier," he admitted. "But it's been so long, and I thought I had finally left that part of my life behind. I never wanted to taint our relationship with the darkness of my past." He paused, taking a deep breath before speaking again. "I served my time, Sarah. I paid for what I did, and I've tried ever since to make amends for my actions. But I see now that simply serving my sentence wasn't enough. I should have been honest with you from the beginning." Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she struggled to reconcile the man she loved with the man who had hidden such a significant part of his history from her. "So, what now?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Can we even begin to rebuild trust after something like this?" Roger's eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of hope and despair. "I don't know," he confessed honestly. "All I can do is offer you my love, my commitment, and my unwavering desire to make things right between us." He reached out to take her hand, his fingers cold and trembling as they entwined with hers. In that moment, Sarah knew she was standing on the precipice of a decision that would shape the rest of her life. Would she give Roger a chance to explain and correct his mistakes? Or would it be better to end this relationship and look for a new beginning, where truth and trust would be the foundation of their relationship? One thing was certain: Sarah had to find the strength to face this difficult situation and choose a path that would bring her peace and happiness. Sarah sat in the silence of her bedroom, surrounded by memories of the passionate moments she had spent with Roger. Her heart was beating frantically, and her thoughts were swirling like storm clouds over the horizon. She knew she had to make a decision that would change her life forever. Memories of Roger were like burning coals that warmed her from the inside. His touch, his smile, his voice, all of it caused a wave of desire and longing. However, alongside these memories, there was a dark truth about Roger, a truth that forced her to confront her own conscience. Roger was a murderer. Sarah couldn't deny that fact, even though her heart screamed no. How could she love a man capable of such cruelty? Can love justify crime? Deep down, Sarah knew she couldn't stay with Roger. She was a mother. She had responsibilities to her family. Her children deserved safety and peace, and she had to give them that. But parting with Roger was like having your heart ripped out of your chest. Every thought of him caused pain. Every memory was like a thorn stuck deep in my soul. How could she abandon the man who had become her greatest love? Sarah closed her eyes and began to pray to God for strength and wisdom. She knew she had to make a decision that would be difficult but necessary. Her heart was bleeding and her soul was crying, but deep down she knew that this was the only way to redemption and a new beginning. She got out of bed, feeling the weight of her decision like a stone on her heart. She took a deep breath and looked in the mirror. Her eyes were full of pain, but also determination. "I have to do this for my family," she said to her reflection. She started packing her bags, carefully folding Roger's clothes and her own. Each item was like a fragment of memories she had to leave behind. She knew this would be the hardest moment, the moment when she would face Roger and tell him the truth. Sarah took a deep breath and moved towards the door. Her heart was beating like a bell, and her palms were wet with sweat. She knew that what she would do would change her life forever, but deep down she felt that it was the only way to save her family and herself. As she left the room, Sarah took one last look at the space she shared with Roger. Her heart was full of pain, but also hope for a new beginning. She knew she had to move forward, even though each step was like a thorn stuck in her soul. "I have to do this," she repeated to herself, as she opened the door and took the first step towards her new life. Chapter 6. Sarah stood in the bedroom, surrounded by the silence of the night that felt heavy and oppressive. Her hands trembled as she gently folded Roger's clothes that were scattered on the bed. Every gesture was full of pain and resignation. Emotions were swirling in her heart: love, grief, guilt, and determination. She knew she had to do it. She couldn't live a lie anymore. She couldn't let her husband John suffer because of her infidelity and betrayal. But how was she supposed to tell him about it? How could she look him in the eye, knowing that she had broken his heart? With each suitcase she packed, she felt as if she was tearing away a piece of her soul. Each of Roger's objects was a reminder of their moments together: laughter, tears, and passion. But now she had to leave it all behind to save what was most precious: her family. Once she finished packing, she sat on the edge of the bed, looking at the empty space next to her. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she thought about Roger, who now lay in the next room, unaware of what was happening. She knew she had to do it quickly before she lost her nerve. She stood up and walked quietly down the hall. The door to Roger's room was ajar. She could hear his calm breathing, which now seemed even more melancholic. She knew she couldn't wake him up. She had to do it without saying a word. She entered the room and stood by the bed. Roger was sleeping deeply, his face calm and innocent. She saw him as the man she loved, but now she also saw the monster he had become. She slowly leaned over him and kissed him gently on the forehead. It was a gesture of farewell, the last touch of a love that could no longer last. She knew that this kiss would be forever etched in her heart, a symbol of what she had lost and what she could never get back. She turned and left the room, closing the door behind her. She knew that now she had to return to her husband to rebuild what was destroyed. She was ready for this fight, ready for the pain and suffering that would come. But she also knew that this was the only path to redemption and a new life for her and her family. Epilogue. In the heart of a picturesque seaside village, where the ocean waves whisper secrets to the shore and the seagulls scream songs of love and loss, the epilogue of this story takes place. Sarah, a woman with a heart full of remorse and hope, stands on the threshold of the house she once shared with John, her fisherman husband. She holds a bouquet of wild flowers in his hands, and tears shine in his eyes, tears of grief and joy. When Sarah knocks on the door, her heart pounds like it wants to burst out of her chest. John stands in the doorway, a man with a face lined with wrinkles and a look full of love that has withstood storms and storms. Their eyes meet, and in that moment, time seems to stop. "John," Sarah whispers, holding the flowers out in front of her. "I came to ask your forgiveness." John looks at her silently, his look speaking louder than words. He sees before him a woman who has gone astray, but now she comes back to him with a heart full of remorse and love. He knows that life is full of challenges and mistakes, but these are what make it beautiful. "Sarah," John says quietly, opening his arms wide, "I know that the path to forgiveness is difficult, but love can overcome even the greatest obstacles." Their embrace is long and tearful, and in that moment, Sarah feels as if the whole world has stopped to give them this moment. John hugs her tightly, his voice shaking as he whispers, "I forgive you." From then on, Sarah and John become one, supporting each other in difficult times and enjoying every day spent together. Their love, although put to the test, turns out to be stronger than all adversities. Together, they rebuild their lives and family, creating a new story full of love, understanding, and commitment. As the days pass, Sarah and John spend every moment with their children, enjoying their smiles and joy. Together they work to rebuild what was destroyed, and their love becomes the foundation of a new life. Sarah discovers a strength she didn't realize she had, and John learns to forgive and love unconditionally. The moral of this story is simple but profound. Love can survive even the biggest storms if we allow it to blossom and nurture it every day. Sarah and John show that it is never too late for forgiveness and a new beginning. Their story is proof that love, forgiveness, and collective efforts can rebuild what has been destroyed and create something beautiful from the ashes of the past. At the heart of this story is the truth that every day is a chance for a new beginning, and love can survive even the darkest moments. Sarah and John show us that it is worth fighting for what we love, because only then life becomes truly beautiful. The end.